In this video, I'll be getting into why you should be excited for WoW Classic as a Final Fantasy XI or just old school MMO fan. Because let's face it, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen isn't coming out tomorrow. Also, stick around to the end for why I think WoW has a better chance at surviving as a classic model than Final Fantasy XI might, and why that's not necessarily a bad thing. When World of Warcraft was released back in 2005, it split the Final Fantasy XI community. Many were disgusted by its cartoonish art style and swift solo leveling progress, at least for the day compared to what 11 was, and it just didn't appeal to the same parts of the brain that made people love Final Fantasy XI. Others were, like many in the gaming community, immediately drawn to the fascinating world of Azeroth, and some never returned. World of Warcraft was this amazingly different game, drawing players away, drastically changing the genre. So some people are still a little peeved by it. Like, it took away my friends. My friends were taken from me to World of Warcraft, to Azeroth, and I missed them in my Final Fantasy XI life. That actually happened to me. We lost about like half the link shell, and they just never came back. I mean, World of Warcraft was this massively different game, drawing players away from MMOs all over the place, drastically changing the genre, and people got a little defensive of their favorite games. So it's weird now in 2019, as a steadfast Final Fantasy XI player for the past 17 years, to be saying that I think WoW Classic, I guess it isn't really 17 years, that's how long the game's been around, but it wasn't in the US, it's been like 15 years, I don't know, it's like a ridiculous amount of time, like half my life. But it's weird as a steadfast Final Fantasy XI fan to be saying that I think WoW Classic is going to be one of the best things to happen to MMOs this year, and I really think that's true. It should come as no surprise to anybody that's been on this channel before that I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy XI as it was classically back in the mid-2000s. While not perfect, it was a pace of game and style that you just can't find now, and it drew people together unlike any other game I've ever seen. And that kind of community, that drawing together of like-minded people is something that's sorely lacking in most modern multiplayer experiences. This includes, of course, Final Fantasy XI. Final Fantasy XI in 2019 is a very different game from what it was back in the mid-2000s, and while a ton of fun, a lot of the changes have introduced the same problems we see in other modern MMOs. It's still fantastic, but there's no denying that some of what made people fall in love with it when it first released in the early expansions, what made people so passionate about the game to begin with is no longer really present. Different things are present that make it equally enjoyable, but in totally different ways. Bringing us to why Final Fantasy XI fans should be excited for WoW Classic. If you're new here, this is Hunt for Games, sharing my tips and passions for classics like Final Fantasy XI and other old MMOs and games, as well as jumping on new games that I'm hoping are going to bring back some of that amazing multiplayer goodness. If you're into any of that stuff, consider subscribing, and don't forget to tick the bell in the bottom right, left, I don't know, whatever side it is, to get notified when these new videos go live. Or if you're interested in some of the other behind the scenes stuff for Hunt for Games in general, check out the Patreon link in the description below. We do a lot of cool stuff there. But back to the Warcraft and what's drawing me in. First off, we're talking about a bygone era, the mid-2000s of gaming. The PS2 is in its prime, and games are just in a very different place. Classic WoW is a picture in time of MMOs in 2005. But even if it was the first MMO to kind of introduce some of the more streamlined elements in the genre, in its earliest state, it is still far more mid-2000s, if that makes any sense, than modern MMOs. The open world was hugely dangerous. Even though it was meant to be an experience that could be enjoyed solo, running around solo wasn't the safest thing. Like, you had to be really careful with what you did. Pulling or aggroing more than one enemy at a time was a big deal and would often spell instant death for your character. Managing health and mana post-fights was a resource and an activity that you had to think about. You had to rest and use food and drink to recover these rare, not rare, but you had to manage your health and MP after fights. You couldn't just run from fight to the next fight, immediately having it restored. Now, most people would look at that, and we've talked about the pace of game before, but most people would look at that and say like, "God, that sounds so boring. I'm just sitting there doing nothing." But that slowing you down for a second is so crucial. It makes you rethink every action you take just a little bit more, because you know that, like, if I fight that stupid little, I want to say Saw again, but the Murlocs, wow, I gotta I gotta switch those things going on. But anyways, every time you fight something, you might have to rest afterwards. You gotta decide, like, is this fight worth it? You don't just plow through the world like this steamroller of destruction. Quests require looking for clues and details in the quest description, consulting guides. Rare enemies often have long repop times that you just have to kind of wait out, whether or not they're for a quest or just something, maybe they have a drop that you really want. You've got to possibly wait a while. Now, some of what I just said, you know, the idea of pulling more than one enemy is devastating, managing your health and having to rest post battle, quests just often requiring online guides because they can be so complicated, or at least a heavy thought process or help from another player. I could be describing Final Fantasy XI or WoW. At the time when WoW first released it, the two games couldn't seem more different, but in reality they do share a lot of what made me appreciate the genre so much initially. Group play was heavily encouraged and even required for certain content. I mean, fights were as much about understanding your group structure and various support abilities and spells as it was about understanding the enemy. Final Fantasy XI has gotten to a place where a lot of the hardest fights are so resistant to most forms of damage or enfeebling that it's just, you have to have a specific job to kind of plow through it. Final Fantasy XIV is much more about understanding yourself and your own role than it is about understanding other players. Although, you know, there are various support abilities that can help really push you over the edge to peak efficiency. But WoWClassic, like, I mean, some would say almost to a negative, you focus so intensely on the party makeup because not every job could fill every role equally. If you had like a druid tank, a bear druid, for instance, I mean, a lot of people might complain quite a lot, but if that's what you had to work with that and say, like, okay, well, how is this going to change so we can approach these fights if, you know, we don't have a warrior that can just like face tank all this stuff? Sure, that created a bit of an elitist, you know, community mindset where a lot of people would be like, if you're a bear druid, we don't want anything to do with you. But some of the most fun I had in games like Final Fantasy XI was saying, like, we have a strategy that we think can work, and we're gonna do it whether or not the general community thinks it's the best way to approach this. And I think, you know, in 2019, revisiting WoWClassic, I hope to see a lot more of that because people are less about the, like, perfect approach. We've been playing WoW and other MMOs for the past 10 to 15 years. People are willing to try some different stuff to freshen things up. I hope that's what it's gonna be like. The point is, it wasn't just broken down into this like square peg for square holes breakdown of roles so that any tank, any DD, any healer could be almost imperceptible from the other. They each had their own unique flavor and approached problems. And like I said, this led to some imbalance between the classes, but that imbalance could also be incredibly fun. Can we just take this down with like 4 bear druids and a priest? I don't know, maybe, probably not, maybe. Do we want to? I don't know. Without an automatic dungeon finder that modern iterations like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth rely on, player communication is once again at the forefront. So I've got to get out of my comfort zone a little. These games have kind of squashed this about me, but I do tend to avoid talking to people in games because I don't have to. And it's gonna be hard for me in the first few days, but I've got to talk to people. I've got to share my class, my talent tree focus, discuss whether or not I can actually create a group around what we have. If I'm starting to talk to people and I'm like, hey, I'm a shadow priest, and they're like, I don't think that's gonna work. We don't really need that role. And I'm like, screw you guys. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna have to have that communication. And a lot of people are gonna look at that and say, that's not for me. I like what the newer generation of MMOs offers me. It offers me that less interaction, more just gameplay style of MMOs, which a lot of people really do appreciate. I lean towards I miss the social interaction. That's why I want to play MMOs. So I'm excited about this. But I have seen a lot of people in the comments say, like, socially, it's just not for me. I want to communicate with maybe my friends, but not randoms. I never want to talk to like a random person ever. I'm like, okay, I sort of see where you're coming from. I do. But I got off on a little bit of tangent there. The point is, everything just takes longer. It takes longer to do stuff. Yeah, the grind wasn't Final Fantasy 11 level, but it's a lot slower than 11 is today. You can be 1 to 99 in like 2 seconds. Actually, it's probably faster than World of Warcraft retail. Now, there's an endgame grind that is absurd, but you see what I'm saying. And because it is still a grind, leveling gear, rare items for the lower levels, it can still have incredible value. It might even be worth it for you to save up for or hunt down that rare piece of gear for like level 20 or 30 because it could truly make a difference in how fast you get from 30 to 40, 50, 60, etc. Whereas modern iterations, that gear's not going to last you 2 levels. Why would you spend all the time getting it? You might as well just keep going. Plus, personally, back when WoWClassic was, retail, I was absorbed in Final Fantasy XI. I kind of missed it. I jumped in a little later and I tried to catch up to my friends who'd all started out. I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I figured it out, but I couldn't get into it. I just couldn't get into WoW with how absorbed I was in Final Fantasy XI. And this could finally be my chance to kind of experience what other people experienced. Just have a good time. It'll be cool to jump into a fresh MMO, even if that fresh MMO is an old MMO. It's kind of weird. With all the people that are joining it with that enthusiasm and excitement and energy that comes with a new MMO release, and possibly more, because you have on top of that the eruption of nostalgia for WoWClassic. I mean, look, what it comes down to for me personally is that I'm always asking for more classic gameplay, a focus on socialization, slowing things down, more buffs and utility spells, and less hard rotations. And I just want more about exploration, dangerous open world, less face rolling everything around me. And while I'm normally talking about 11 when I ask for these things, these are all changes that WoWClassic is offering me. If someone told me that a new MMO is coming out with all of this, they described all the features of WoWClassic and they said this is coming out, it's tailoring back to some old school MMO ideas, I'd be like, oh my god, I'm ecstatic, this sounds amazing. But WoW brings with it a bit of a stigma, for better or worse. Like, this is a game that we've known, but I don't know. I never really played it that hardcore. So let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. We've talked about this a couple times on Twitch streams and other like offhanded comments, but are you excited for WoWClassic as a Final Fantasy XI fan? Obviously, if you played WoW and you're interested for those reasons, I want to hear your thoughts as well. But I'm really curious about the people that loved Final Fantasy XI in its core iteration. How you feel about WoWClassic as the only, not only, but the biggest retail classic offering, and by retail I mean like officially released by the developer, public offering that's available right now. Hit me up in the comments with your thoughts. As a last little bonus though, why I think WoWClassic might have more legs, could survive a little bit longer, if not indefinitely, than Final Fantasy XI Classic if it came out. This is going to come out wrong. I think Final Fantasy XI has a huge chance as a classic iteration to make a huge dent in the gaming community and really survive on its own, and people will really enjoy it if it ever released. I think my experience on Eden has shown me that, has shown others that people are really enjoying the private servers and everything. It could definitely do well. In fact, if WoWClassic does well, I hope we see something like that from Square Enix. I'm sure they're watching. But if you gave me, if you said you've got a bet to place, do you think WoW or Final Fantasy XI has a better chance to survive this kind of gameplay model? I'm gonna go with WoW every time. There is a larger player base that is interested in WoWClassic than Final Fantasy XI Classic. I think that's just like a fact. In terms of overall subscribers, Final Fantasy XI has done very well, much better than Square Enix ever expected it to do. And I love it as one of my favorite games of all time. WoW attracted gamers that weren't gamers. WoW has attracted people that don't play video games, like that just for whatever reason loved WoW. It was this weird mental thing. It just drew in so many people, and so many people are looking for that nostalgic experience that it's going to have a huge influx in if nothing else in the initial release. But it also was that transition point. WoW was the first to kind of ease players into a more approachable daily model of play. Final Fantasy XI was based on EverQuest. WoW was trying to take the EverQuest idea and make it more approachable to the everyday gamer, and they succeeded. Modern style gamers who are used to hop in, hop out, you've got 20 minutes, you can make some progress, this streamlined lifestyle that we live in these days, it's going to be a little bit less of a jump for them to get into WoWClassic than something like Final Fantasy XI Classic or EverQuest or some of the older games. It's just going to be an easier transition. It will be harder. The worlds are more difficult. The grind is still there, even though it's much less. And I think that transition will be a little bit easier. Whereas if somebody just released Final Fantasy XI tomorrow, players that had never played Final Fantasy XI are going to hop in there and just be like blasted in the face with the difficulty, the slowness. And some may love it. I think a lot would love it, but a lot would be terrified and they would back off. So I think that's where WoW has a great chance to pull in both new and old players and not immediately scare them away with how different it is from modern games. But again, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well. I mean, is that in the right direction? Do you hear what I'm saying? Or am I misjudging the current community? Do you think something like a Final Fantasy XI Classic release would do just as well? Like easily just as well, maybe better? I don't know. I talked a little bit about this in my my video about what makes Final Fantasy XI classic. What was the best era of Final Fantasy XI? I'll link to the description for that, as well as a card up there if I remember to put it there, to check out that video if you haven't already. Guys, I'm excited. We'll have to do some kind of announcement on what server I'm gonna be on. We're trying to gather everybody together in a single server. I do think we are playing Horde, so we'll keep update on that if you're interested in joining us in some WoW Classic. But I'll see you guys at the end of August in WoW in Azeroth. Keep on the lookout for more videos like this every week, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more videos like this, think about subscribing. And if you already have, don't forget to click that little bell next to the sub button to get notified when new videos go live. Hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on this video, or come hang out and chat with me on Twitch every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely look me up on Twitter or Instagram and Hunt for Games to keep up with what else I've got going on. See ya.